Пространство.
International cultural space, intercultural dialogue for the peace. 19th festival. International cultural space. Intercultural dialogue for peace. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I have to tell you that I accepted this invitation with great trepidation. I was invited to moderate this discussion because this festival, the World Festival of Youth and Students, it's a special page in my life. I am going to say a few words because I believe that I am practically a child of the festival, and it's not exactly what you think about, because, in 1957, my mother was your age, and she was graduate of Moscow State University. She was beautiful. She was an athlete. She was a musician, just like you. It's all about you. And she was invited to work as a volunteer at the festival. And there they had the representatives of different countries, a lot of representatives of Africa. And when they saw my mother, they realized that she was the most beautiful woman in the world, and they left Moscow. And at that time, my father, he was in Tanzania, in Zanzibar. He was getting ready to become prime minister of that country, and he was looking for a wife. And he couldn't find a wife, he couldn't find a nice girl, and he was told that there was such a girl, and she lived in Moscow, in Russia, covered with snow. And my father traveled to Russia. It was a long story, but to cut a long story short, I am the result of their love, and they actually met because of the festival, and that's why look at the person next to you. So maybe it's your fate. Ladies, look around. So don't neglect this opportunity. But in my family, and I had an imam and a rabbi and a priest, and in order to keep our family intact, we had to maintain constant intercultural dialogue for the sake of the family. But how to conduct this intercultural dialogue for peace in the whole world, we're going to learn from our distinguished guests who came here from 9 countries. These are real gems. We found fantastic speakers you are not going to see anywhere else. And let's start with Silva Sousa Santos, the president of Portugal Foundation of Multiculturalism and Social Responsibility. So round of applause.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Dear colleagues on the panel, dear young students, let me express my privilege and satisfaction to be here with all of you and to have the opportunity to share some ideas and experiences. In Sharing Foundation, we are truly thankful to cooperate with many Russian institutions as Diplomatic Academy, Rosotrudnichestvo, and many others like Tetriakov Charitable Foundation for the organization of the last Russian Cultural Days in Portugal and an exhibition called Contrast Harmony, a cultural dialogue in the Cultural Center of Minister of Foreign Affairs in Moscow. Highlighting the subject of this conference, Intercultural Dialogue for Peace, I would like to take this opportunity to say that this thematic concept is a very challenging goal for humanity and the main purpose in our sharing foundation. The concept of interculturalism requires the ability and competence between us, and this delivers us a better understanding of human and accomplish the goal of all mankind. From an anthropocentric point of view, the human is a social individual with his own intrinsic values, which needs to live by itself and also with others in community, even if and when his personal beliefs or convictions are not exactly the same among people and community. The limit between personal and social is a very fragile and tenuous line made by our differences, which must be accepted in society through tolerance. This individual, this human being, keeps his own individuality and simultaneously creates his social inclusion. If and when it doesn't work, the output is the social failure, and it comes with social isolation and turbulence. Tolerance is the social attitude that can lead us to recognize others the right to a different vision and opinion, and also to express ourselves by being individuals with a multicultural personality within an intercultural world. Tolerance and multiculturalism as individual cultural diversity in our societies can be a leitmotif for debates in favor of democracy, peace, and safety. This demands from us, as social individuals, a deontological ethic as an intrinsic value for morality and even for our scientific civilization. Accepting the culture of others is accepting us as different individuals through a diverse and multicultural society. Understanding others' ideas means reproducing tolerance by different approaches and analyses, which reflects our capability to accept others' differences in our individuality. Working with multiculturalism and tolerance in future generations can lead us to a democratic society growth and prosperity. In our international sharing schools, we have implemented a multilingual and multicultural education system in which we prepare our students to fluently speak at least five different languages before entering university studies: Portuguese, English, German, Russian, and Chinese. Simultaneously, they learn to speak and accept their intercultural knowledge. This is a remarkable achievement because they can learn passion, emotional intelligence, balance, and resilience in different ways. Our students are strongly supported to manage themselves and social situations in life. They have the ability to manage their own obstacles and to see different paths. To keep the path in our own main goals, we have to be focused and interpersonal as interpersonal individuals. And my friends, have no doubt this is only achieved by intercultural relations. Nowadays, with so many changes all over the world, with the challenges of a vertiginous increasing globalization, with the threat of destabilization in different continents, with the collapse of former strong economic and political concepts and systems, the intercultural dialogue and cooperation, as knowledge and understanding of different cultures and languages will make a difference between war and peace. At this point, allow me to emphasize. First, the progress of a nation will go through the preservation and affirmation of its national identity, but also through a more comprehensive identity which I defend today, assumed by multicultural and multilingual education. Second, for us in Sharing Foundation, we assume that education implies a global agenda founded on the concept of interculturalism. This educational policy will be able to break the paradigm and create the necessary linkage to a new capacity of learning based on the ability of self-individual. I, have, I leave you this challenge. The school is not longer a unique narrative. The individual is created by an intercultural model through a multilingual and multicultural curriculum. My friends and students, this is our legacy, this is our demand, and we in Sharing Foundation believe this is the necessary input to produce changes. Our commitment in our countries all over the world is to work together to achieve cooperation and develop open knowledge regarding our common interests and allowing our nations to have an important and decisive role in the very complex but upcoming world decisive changes. I'd like to conclude these very simple ideas by extending all of you the largest possible cultural hug for all our neighbor countries and nations from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans, covering all continents. I'm truly touched by this audience and grateful for your attention. Thank you.
Спасибо, Сильвио Соза.
Thank you, Silva Souza. So these are very simple but profound ideas. And if you have any questions to our speaker, you can ask these questions now when you raise your hand. But then maybe when everybody, okay, you'd like to ask a question, please. Now you'll get the microphone, maybe. Well, please come here. You're hiding. We cannot see you.
I'm a medical student.
Выходите сюда. Вас не видно.
Please come here. We don't see you. Right here. Come on. No anonymous questions, please. My name is Kola. I am from Germany. I'm a student.
Mr. Santos, and I wanted to state my fear about the nationalist idea. You were saying that it's important for a nation to develop a national identity and to stick to its own culture, but in Germany, in historical Germany, we have suffered from this idea, and I think that nowadays nationalism threatens the collaboration between people and the intercultural communication you were talking about so much. And I don't see that the nationalist idea of making a national identity helps us to work together and promote peace in the world. What do you say about that?
Thank you for your question. In the presentation, I put two ideas, mixing two ideas. One is to keep our national culture, and then to know and to accept and to interact with other cultures. It's a mix. Of course, the nationalism can be very dangerous, and we have seen it in Second World War, we have seen it in Germany in the past. At the same time, the fully open doors to cultures come, don't understanding our national culture, to us don't understanding their culture, can create the new problems that we are living in European Union countries, for instance. And the solution for this, of course, is not to kill the other cultures. That happens in the past. This infelicity, and is to understand and to live with them, and at the same time, to not allow and expect them to agree with our culture. I can understand when the President Vladimir Putin say that the people that wants to come to live in Russia must respect Russian culture and traditions. Of course, we can understand other cultures and traditions, and multiculturalism education, multilingualism education can be skills to make us better understand. But there's a mix of these two situations. I believe is very wrong and dangerous and bad for humanity. They exacerbate nationalism, but at the same time, the full open doors with no education before to be tolerant, to understand, and to deal with the other cultures creates a different problem. And we are living that problems in many countries in the European Union. The terrorism problems, other problems. And the solution, of course, is not to kill the other persons, not to kill the ones that have different culture from us, but don't allow the ones that have a different culture us to come to kill us. This is the balance the political needs to do. And what we defend is from kindergarten, a multilingual and multicultural education can create better new generations that can lead better with these different approaches. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Если есть еще какие-то
If you have any other questions, now it's time to raise your hands, please.
Mr. Santos, thank you for emphasizing the issue of tolerance in cultural aspect first. And my question is, how do you introduce this multilingual curriculum? Does it happen at the kindergarten? Does it happen in school? How do you do that? Is it is it common for Portugal? So all the students, before entering the university, do they know 5 languages or at least 4?
Thank you for your question. Unfortunately, it's not common in Portugal, and it's not common all over the world. What we defend, it must become common. The political policy, the public policy must go on this direction. That's what we defend, and that's what to try to achieve through our foundation, opening schools in different countries. In our schools, kids go to kindergarten with 3 years old. They have their national language in Portugal, and the Portuguese-speaking countries is Portuguese. And the kindergarten is totally bilingual. Half of the staff and teachers are Portuguese native speakers, and half of the staff and teachers are English native speakers. At 6 years old, kids are fully bilingual, and they start studying at 6 years old in year 1, primary year, PIP 1, and they start English as a working language. Then they keep the national language, and we introduce the Chinese language at 6 years old. At 9 years old, we introduce German. At 12 years old, we introduce Russian. And then they have these 5 languages until 18 years old, and they have 2 more options. These 5 are curricular. And then they have 2 options, Spanish and French. They can do extracurricular, and they can talk 7 languages. But mainly, it's not only language, it's language and culture they learn. That's why last 3 weeks, we have a group of Portuguese students in Sochi, in Artek, in Crimea, spending 3 weeks with other students from Russia and from other countries, learning more and more language and culture, Russian language and culture. And that's why we organize in our country the Russian Cultural Days, the Chinese Cultural Days, etc. And we organize in these countries some events like the one I have referred in Moscow. It's a cultural exhibition between Portugal and Russia, and we call the Cultural Dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Это потрясающе. Я с такой
That's amazing, fascinating. I felt so envious. I remember that I tried to make my daughter speak English, but she stopped listening to me altogether, and she just said that there was no intercultural dialogue. And I gave up. But what you tell us, it's fascinating, just fascinating. And now I would like to give the floor to the person Well, you can ask this person about American cinema, everything you wanted to know, but were too shy to ask. Neil Landau is head of a script department of California University in Los Angeles, and also he has Spanish Oscar for Tadeo Jones cartoon. Also, he's an author of such movies, Don't Tell Mommy That Our Nanny is Dead, and also there is the pilot series for CBS, Disney, Warner Brothers. Okay, he should be invited to Channel 1 Russian TV. And he also speaks Russian really well. Neil.
I am Neil Landau. It's very nice to meet you. I live in Los Angeles. I am a citizen of the world.
I believe very deeply and very strongly that movies are the universal language that can connect us all. And currently, we are in what I call a digital television revolution. Netflix is joining the world through storytelling. Netflix is now in every country in the world except, of course, North Korea, Syria, and China. But I expect Netflix to move into China very soon. I was in Shanghai recently, and I think some kind of deal will be imminent. So Netflix will be almost everywhere in the world with programs not just made by American content creators, but local programming that are about local cultures, local families, and it gives us a chance to see how people live in other parts of the world. I think this is very important because when we get to know characters on a personal level, when we're watching them each week on television, for example, I think that what that does is it plants seeds for empathy and compassion. And what we come to realize is that the things we have in common as human beings are much greater than the things that separate us and divide us and the things that make us different. And as we start to learn about each other, that we have families, that we fall in love, that we get our hearts broken, that we have dreams, that we sometimes succeed and reach, and other times that failures we experience, we see that we are all people that just have feelings and emotions. And I know it sounds very LA, to say this in a very idealistic way, but I truly believe that our emotions and our feelings and our ability to love and our ability to connect on a level of empathy and compassion is the hope that I see for my children as they grow up. And I think it's very, very important. So it's not just that we're creating entertainment, we're actually creating stories that enlighten, challenge, provoke, and entertain. And at the heart of every story is laughter, tears, emotion, catharsis. These are the things that, to me, are what make a story really worthwhile. The external events, the special effects, that's almost like the icing on the cake. But inside the cake, the soul, the heart and soul of a story is what brings us all together. I want to tell you, I have a few remarks to make, but first I want to tell you a story about my story. When I was 6 years old, my father suddenly died. He was playing basketball and he had a heart attack and he fell and he never got up. I was at home, at the time I lived in New York. My mother was making breakfast and she got a phone call and she was told, your husband has just died. My mother had me, I was 6, my brother who was 9 years old. My mother had no job, no formal education, and all of a sudden our entire life fell apart. In my 6-year-old mind, I didn't understand even the concept of death. For me, there was just this gigantic void, this big hole in my life that just suddenly appeared with no explanation, and I could not process it. I didn't have the emotional maturity or intellect to understand this. This void created my story as a screenwriter, because if you've seen my work, every story I've ever told involves a father and a son, because I'm using my work and creating fiction to try to make sense of this void that was established when I was a very young child. And I believe that we all have voids in our life, and I think all creativity and movies and television come from these voids. So if you think about it, there's much more that we do not know than we do know. The unknown is much greater than the known. So we have under the sea, where we really don't know the very bottom of the sea or any of the mysteries of the sea. And then we have outer space. I was watching a documentary recently about the International Space Station and about the Hubble telescope. Do you know about this telescope that can see into space? Well, the telescope, each year, the astronauts have been making missions to this telescope to make improvements, because as each year the telescope has been improved as we've increased our knowledge and technology. There was an astrophysicist who was being interviewed about this telescope. What the telescope can now see, what used to be just black, just an infinite expanse of black, they now see galaxies in the distance. And what the astrophysicist said, which I thought was fascinating and applies very much to storytelling, and I'll explain why in a moment. If you look at every grain of sand on every beach in the entire world, there are still more galaxies in the universe than grains of sand on every beach in every part of the world. And each one of those galaxies is a complete mystery to us. We are one of these galaxies. So what does that tell you? It tells you, one, that we are extremely insignificant. We are less than a grain of sand. And yet, as storytellers, and what I teach my students at UCLA, is our job is to make the insignificant significant. How do you make audiences care about strangers, about characters who have no impact on their lives? These are fictional characters, and the idea is we must create stories that always have suspense, that create interest in the audience, where they not only are going to watch a movie, for example, they're going to pay money to sit and watch a movie, and they need to connect with the characters. How do they connect with the characters? How do we generate this level of empathy? I believe the secret to all great storytelling is vulnerability, creating characters that are vulnerable, that the audience can connect with. And that's all about love and fear. What are characters afraid of? What do they yearn for? What do they hope for? I think all great stories are about trying to understand the great mysteries of the universe. So when we have these voids and these mysteries that we don't understand, what we do is we create stories to try to make sense of those things. So we have superheroes, where we think maybe somebody can come with special powers to save us all from something. We have mysteries, we have thrillers, we have action-adventure, we have the human comedy. All of these things are the search for truth. They're all a search for us to try to understand ourselves and each other. And when we watch a movie or a great television show, and I personally believe currently television has the most interesting storytelling of all. I'll take Game of Thrones any day over any movie right now, because it's a long-term relationship. Instead of a short 2-hour experience, you can tell a story over 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 hours. It's like reading a great Russian novel where it just goes on and you get to go deeper and deeper into the characters. The other thing I want to say is that So stories, even though on the external level they seem to be about special effects and stupid comedies that make us laugh and entertain us, it's really on a much deeper level about existentialism and about us trying to understand who we are, why we're here, why our lives matter. We're trying to find some sense in the chaos, some meaning in the world. Kierkegaard said that life can only be understood backward, but must be lived forward. And Jean-Luc Godard, the great French filmmaker, said, all stories have a beginning, middle, and end, but not necessarily in that order. And the idea is all movies have a beginning and an end, and everything that comes in between is enlightening us and getting us hopefully to think about ourselves on a deeper level and about ourselves in relation to other people. So I feel that I'm here today to talk about the idea that history may not repeat itself, but it does indeed rhyme. And I hope and believe that through fictional stories that are emotional, that stir us up to feel something, hopefully will encourage connection and understanding between our cultures. I've written 4 books on writing movies and television. My 5th book comes out in January. My books are in 12 different languages. I travel all over the world, meet different people, and I see that we have so much in common. I was in Israel last December. I was invited by Hebrew University, and I went to the university to give a talk. And what I saw is, first of all, Hebrew University is a secular university. There is a mosque, there's a Buddhist temple, there's a synagogue, there's a church, there's a Hindu temple. And everyone was coexisting on this one campus, and everyone had a hunger for knowledge and for understanding of each other. And it provided me with a great sense of hope that this is possible. I like to think that I'm an optimist, and as a father who's now, I have 2 sons, the story I continue to tell and live is how do I become a better man? How do I become a better father when I grew up, for the most part, without a father, without a role model? So for me, life is always a mystery, and I'm always watching movies and television and reading literature and traveling, trying to have a greater understanding of what connects us. And hopefully I can pass that on to my children, because the future of the world are the youth in the world. And so thank you so much for inviting me, and I will be here later teaching a master class on writing movies and television. And just bear in mind, the last thing I want to tell you is, in order to write and tell stories, you need to live, you need to travel, you need to dream, but most of all, you need to play. Albert Einstein said that the highest levels of creativity unfold through play. So enjoy yourselves in Sochi, play, party, enjoy life. It goes by very quickly. And then take all of this interaction with each other, and then you need to sit down and get to work and think, what do I want to say? What is my legacy? What do I want to leave? What stamp of mine do I want to leave on the world when I leave this planet and hand it on to the future generations? And so I hope my words inspire you on some level to do something great with your lives. So thank you so much.
Спасибо, Нил.
Many, many thanks for this very inspiring and optimistic statement. And I'm sure we now have questions about movies. Would you like to learn to write movie scripts, or do you have a suggestion to make? No, I have a question on what Neil has said about stories. Stories and the globalization of stories. You've mentioned Netflix and that it will spread all over the world. Is it not a kind of Americanization of the world rather than globalization? And my second question is, why are American stories more popular? Why are American stories so popular in the world, and American movies, American novels, and so on? Thank you.
Good questions. First question, what's great about Netflix, in my opinion, is they not only export American television series and movies. But what they are doing is actually spending, over the next year, they're going to spend over $15 billion on development and acquisitions. And a large part of this budget is going to be going to other countries and working with local talent to create native programming that, in fact, I've worked in Russia with Alexander Tsikalo and Sergei Silyanov and Alexander Akopov, and Tsikalo has recently sold several of his series to Netflix, and they will, it's not that, I would agree with you that this is American imperialism of our entertainment if we were taking, for example, a show like The Method from Russian television and put it in English and set it in the same show in New York. I would say that is the opposite of positive globalization. But these shows,
Мне кажется, вы вполне можете
I think you can purchase our wonderful show, KVN, or What, Where, When. Please write them down. They are future American blockbusters.
also a really wonderful show called Thaw is the title in English, but the idea is they will be made, Netflix is going to make them available not to us in the US and all over the world in Russian with English subtitles, French subtitles. So they're spreading shows that are, and we're watching shows from Israel and from Denmark and from Russia. And so I think this is amazing and something that never used to happen. So Netflix, I believe, they're almost becoming like ambassadors, where they are representing all parts of the world and not just trying to homogenize everything to be American. Your second question about why are American movies and television so popular in the world, I mean, it's a complicated question. I think one reason is, up until recently, we tend to export aspiration and hope, the American dream, the so-called American dream. Now, and I think that that sense of optimism, we're a very young country, we're a very arrogant country, which I'm embarrassed about, because Russia is such a much more mature, more sophisticated country in terms of history and humanities and art and music and literature. I think that Americans tend to think that, you know, we're the best, but that's really just arrogance and naivete, because other countries, in my opinion, have much deeper, richer historical roots and have made much greater contributions to the arts. But I do think that our ability to tell stories that are hopeful, that make people at least think that if you have a dream, you can achieve it. They're based on this form of optimism. Of course, I don't want to get overly political, but I can just tell you that I am not a fan of Donald Trump. And I think a lot of this optimism that we have had is now really in question. And I worry about the future of my country because of our current leadership. So I'm hoping that movies and television can transcend some of those things through stories, through escapism. If you think about some of the most popular shows, they deal with multiverses and portals and time travel and all kinds of possibilities that are beyond just time and space that's right in front of us. So, but I think I think that will change. I think that it's just Hollywood just emerged and we became a dominant force, but I do see that dramatically changing. And one more very quick fact that I learned, if it's okay. I was in Shanghai in July, and one of the things I learned from a very reliable source, so I think it's probably true, if you look at the whole global box office as a pie, currently between 80 and 90% of the global box office is not the United States, not other parts of Europe, not Russia, it's China. So I do think China will be a dominant force in the movie industry going forward, and hopefully there'll be co-productions. But in order for movies and television, and blockbusters in particular in the movies, to succeed, they have to reach a global audience. You can't just have a story that's only for Americans anymore. It will never be successful. It's not a sustainable business model. So we do need stories that are for the whole world. And to me, that also gives me hope that this will change, this Hollywood dominance of entertainment. Thank you.
Нил, спасибо за ваш
Thank you so much, Neil. And now I would like to give the floor to Giuseppe Scotti. He's an Italian doctor, and he participated in the festival in 1957. And now, 60 years after, this Italian doctor is in Moscow again, was in Moscow again, and he recalled what happened at the time of the festival. Giuseppe is an author of the book. He showed me the book and is giving tribute to the past. We are creating the future. Giuseppe Scotti, you have the floor.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you to everybody. I'm sorry I cannot speak Russian. I can just say spasiba for being here. I do not speak a good English, and I will have to read, but if you want, I can turn my 7 minutes to Neil Landau, and he can repeat his inspiring talk, because he has said wonderful things that I will share completely, and I am trying to say something as inspiring. I haven't written 5 books. This is my 3rd, but the other 2 are medical books, so I don't think they would be of any interest to the audience. So the reason why I'm here is that 6 years, well, I am a doctor now and I live in Milano. I am a retired professor of the university, so I have been dealing with young people for all my life, but also with diseased people and illness and suffering of people. And 6 years ago, in 1957, I was your age, believe it or not. So you can arrive to 2077, don't forget that. 6 years ago, I was, as young as you are now, I was an 18-year-old student just finishing high school, and I decided in Moscow to become a medical doctor, luckily, and not a politician. In August 1957, I attended an unforgettable, extraordinary event, the 6th Festival of Youth and Students in Moscow. Here in Sochi, we are now celebrating the number 19 festival. I'm lucky enough to be still alive, to have a good memory, and to be able to talk to you about the changes, the turmoils, the evolution of 60 years of history of the world that I have witnessed. I have recently, last summer, published this small book that has already been mentioned. This country, Russia, now a great nation among the democracies in the world, was then the Soviet Union, a communist great power that we considered, being young people in Moscow, to be a unique and successful experiment on earth to bring freedom, happiness, solidarity, peace, social justice, and progress to mankind. For those values, in a world that then was at risk of a dreadful nuclear confrontation, the Cold War era. You haven't been there, but we were there. But also with the great hopes opened by a new era, the Pacific coexistence, a promising turning point in the relationship with the Western world, following an unexpected new opening in the Soviet Union, the famous THOO, I think you say Ottepel in Russian, that Nikita Khrushchev was promoting. We gathered together in Moscow 34,000 young men and women from all over the world in 1957. That was Moscow Festival. History has subsequently proven that by pursuing positive, good, and right ideals, we were in fact embracing and promoting an ideology that proved to be inadequate to achieve those ideals. An ideology that we embraced at that time with a sort of religious adhesion and respect, without realizing that it had in itself some seeds of totalitarianism. I have had 60 years to reconsider the reasons of my ideas and choices. I have been helped by the fact that then, in 1957, just in Moscow, I chose a profession I was uncertain whether to be a journalist or a physicist. I was attracted by space discoveries, and in 1957, Soviet Union launched the first Sputnik, so the space era started in 1957. So I choose a profession, that of a medical doctor, that has put me every day in direct contact with the beauty of life, and Neil Landau has said some very inspiring and important words on the importance of life. Some people say that life has no meaning. Life has the meaning in the sense in which we want to give a meaning to life, and that's what we have to do as human beings. With the beauty of life, with its importance, its fragility, its complexity and strength. I have discovered the value of suffering, of fighting diseases and death, and I've learned to respect the value and the diversity of each single person. No, those ideals, the ideals of our youth, were not wrong. They are not dead. They are still alive. They will never die, and you are proving it with this festival. I have learned the importance to rely on objective facts, those of science and research, but I have also discovered the healing power of love. I have learned that progress of each individual happens through intellectual efforts, initiative, sacrifice, culture, and I've learned that progress of mankind happens through the respect for any people with the refusal of violence and imposition, with the respect of freedom and everybody else's ideas. I've learned that it is not with sudden, violent revolutions that we go toward the future, but with sound, progressive reforms and strong and realistic political programs of development and social justice. I've traveled a lot, not as much as Neil Landau has, but I also have traveled a lot, and I know many people in different countries. I visited colleagues, students, and patients in many different countries of the world, not only Europe, but also in North and South America, in Asia, and in Africa. Everywhere, I have found the same basic human values, although expressed and manifested according to different cultural habits, traditions, rules, and beliefs. In a world in which we assist to violent confrontations, to acts of brutal terror in the name of the fanatic presumption of racial or religious or cultural superiority, we must respect different opinions and ideas. We must promote their free expression. We must activate honest and open dialogue as the only method to regulate relationships among people and nations, as we are doing with this festival, and you are doing. In a world that is becoming more and more interconnected, the only guarantee of respect, of cooperation to make the world better is culture. That, to me, means first of all personal, individual, and then collective growth of knowledge and understanding. I strongly recommend you, never give up. Never think that the knowledge you have acquired is sufficient. It's never sufficient. Continue to search, continue to study, continue to travel, to discover, to meet and to know different people. Be enthusiastic and optimistic. I think that optimism helps to grow older. Probably this is the reason why I reached 78 years, being optimist. Keep your ideals, but be realistic and critical. Verify with other people the feasibility of your dreams and of your innovative thoughts. Thank you for having given me this opportunity, 60 years later, to verify that the world can count on your energy and enthusiasm. You are a new generation of leaders that will be capable to master the challenges of present and future, promoting the idea of an open, inclusive, tolerant, and modern society. And do not forget these moments of your life, when in 2077, 60 years from now, and they will come, you will be asked, being survivors of the 2017 festival in Sochi, to transmit to the girls and boys that you will attend the 40th World Youth Festival, maybe on Mars, 2077, you will be on Mars, your memories of these unforgettable days and the experience and wisdom that you will have subsequently acquired. Спасибо. Thank you to everybody.
Спасибо. Я не знаю, есть ли...
Thank you so much. I don't think whether you have questions, but I'm going to ask after the conference, how can you look so great when you're 78, right? No questions? Oh, you have a question?
Di vederti. Sono Anastasia Marozova, sono opera singer.
Well, we would like to find out what you asked about, please. Should I say it in Russian? Yes, I'm really happy to see you here as a representative of Italy. And I am an opera singer, and it would be really interesting for me to meet with Italian delegates at this festival. But I asked a lot of people, I asked volunteers, I asked my organizers, but I cannot meet Italians. I would like to sing for them. I would like to speak in Italian and discuss bel canto and fantastic Italian culture. My question is, how can I find them? Well, I don't think you can ask Giuseppe, but ask the organizers. In this case, I would like to ask, what do you think? Medicine and art together. It's highly important. It's highly important interaction, and it's highly important to be understood by actors, singers, and I teach here in Russia and I sing in Russia, and it's great discovery for me how important it is to know your own body as a musical instrument, how muscles work, how just the diaphragm works, how maybe there are some books, movies, videos you can recommend that we could use to know our bodies better. Thank you.
I will not reply in Italian. Grazie, sono molto contento che sei in grado di parlare italiano, ma ci vediamo casomai dopo. I will reply in English, and to the first question, I think there are a few Italians here. And this is an interesting aspect to discuss with the organizers, because the only Italian, or at least the few Italians I have met, 3 or 4 of them, seem to me to be as I was 60 years ago. I'm not saying it too strongly, because they belong to a very, very, very small party in Italy, which is the Communist Party. Anyway, there are Italian young people. You can meet them. They have a table, a small booth, with a red flag, and they can speak with you about Italy. I was told that there are some 70 or 80 Italian young people attending. I also would like to meet them, and I hope that they will at least give me the opportunity to meet them. Concerning the second point, we will discuss it later because it's too long, but you are right. Medicine, and particularly neurosciences, are doing a lot of progress in putting together the artistic part of our brain with the physical and intellectual part of our brain. So we are learning a lot of things. We are applying many tests, particularly with magnetic resonance, that tell us which part of the brain are working when you are creative artist. And the creative part of the brain is the same for music, for art, for improvisation. Even now I am using the creative part of my brain, believe it or not. It's very poor, the creative part of my brain. Anyway, thank you. Maybe we can meet later and continue talking about this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope, and thank you very much.
Okay.
Спасибо.
Thank you. And now brief question, because we don't have that much time left. Really brief. My name is Adil. I am from the Republic of Tatarstan. I have two questions. Question number one, do you communicate with those people who were at the festival that time? Do you communicate with them, those? And can we somehow get your experience? I am also a student in medical school, and I would like to invite you to Tatarstan. Please visit Tatarstan.
Thank you. I don't know why, but I accept your invitation. We will discuss about medicine later on privately. No, we did not communicate. I must tell you that 60 years ago, to call my parents in Italy, I had to send a telegram that took at least one day to go back home, or to talk to them on the phone, I had to make a reservation and wait 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. Today, I think I have communicated with my wife, my granddaughters. I have even seen them on FaceTime. So it's much, much easier. I suggest you keep your contacts with all the young people you meet in this fantastic meeting, because this is very important. We have communicated for a few years, so I have not remained in contact. Probably Elena Kanga can say more about the fact that other people have remained in contact. Her mother probably remained in contact with other people, but that was not what remained, and what probably made useful the fact that we confronted each other at the festival is what then each one of us brought back to his country, and what each one of us did for the ideals that we were pursuing in those days. I hope I have responded to your question.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Now, Riquetta Jael, she is director of Avignon Theatre in France. She is an actress and a director. Good morning. Thank you so much. И вы интересовались, почему итальянцев нет. Ну, я хочу сказать, что у меня есть итальянская, испанская, французская кровь, поэтому я здесь, можно сказать, представитель мультикультурного человечества. И я продолжу по-французски, если вы не возражаете. Well, first of all, I'm a person that is somebody working in the theater. I dedicated all my life to theater art, which allows us to establish direct contact with the audience. That's what we call live show. And this is not that simple. I used to work in different types of the theater. I'm a writer. I am also adapting some books for the theater, and I also write theater plays. I am an actress. I teach in the University of Avignon. I teach theater art, and I can look at these issues from different points of view. On the one hand, I am an actress. On the other hand, I research what's going on in the theater, and I teach theater art. And my research, my theater research, and my pedagogical activities, so it allows me to look at the issue from different points of view. I travel all over the world. I am in charge of theater seminars. I conduct master classes, and also I bring my plays to different countries. And today I would like to talk about my modest experience. And in the course of all the years of my creative activities, my research, I felt that I could convey my knowledge to very young people. I'm always happy about it. And there was this theater person, Potter Scher, and he had that slogan, through art we get to humanity. And when we convey the knowledge in art, I try to convey it to the whole humanity. I try to convey highly important knowledge. I created a new theater company called Andaluz Theater Company. And Andalusia, it's a very interesting region. There were 3 golden ages in the history of that region.
Living peacefully there were 3 great monotheistic religions. It all ended in the 15th century in 1492, but that history of the coexistence of 3 cultures and religions in Andalusia was a great story. And I have founded a theater entitled Al Andalus, but it's not flamenco, although flamenco is a wonderful type of art. I would like to express something different in that theatrical company. I want to tell the audience about the harmonious interaction of 3 monotheistic cultures. I want to tell the audience how it became possible. It might be a utopia today to explain how people could change themselves. Of course, in the 18th century France, many would talk about education and humanism. But it's one thing to talk about humanism, but another thing to live with it and feel it. And you need to feel it in your body and soul, feel the elements that enable you to open up to another person. Peter Berg and Ariane Manushkin, well-known theatrical personalities, would say that the theater is a sacred art because an artist, an actor, is always associated with some transcendent forces and powers that govern and guide their art. Although we live in a world that has lived through all kinds of dictatorships, we know that even back in those horrible years, people would never lose their human nature. I have performed on stage over 3,000 times, and I am considered as one of the best-known actors performing in masks. It's a rare phenomenon nowadays. There's a tradition of that in Italy. Commedia dell'arte is associated with masks too. When you wear a mask, as it was the case in ancient Greece, it appears that you find it a lot more difficult to lie to the public. The mask makes you more truthful, and it causes you to open up different facets of your personality toward different facets of humanity. A mask is an archetype, of course, but by going back to those archetypes, you can convey to the public some hidden components of the human personality. And those archetypes put you into some strict format, But on the other hand, you convey to the public your authentic feelings. You open up to the public and the world, and you realize your own feelings better than without the mask, and you convey them better as well. Also, I'm chair of the Arab European Center, in which 17 Arab countries cooperate. And at the Avignon Inn Festival, we invite actors and actresses from different Arab countries for them to show us the performing arts in countries where political and economic situations may be complicated. And I've invited actors from the National Theater of Baghdad. It was a unique event. I met with Arab actors Iraqi actors in Morocco, and they would tell me miraculous things about theatrical life in a country at war. And I immediately decided we needed to invite them to the festival at Avignon. And I invited them in April, and the festival was in July, but they did come and performed the play entitled My Name is Dizla. And then in 2011, I went to Baghdad and played there in a performance. So if you have this flame, if you have this desire and ability to tell the world that you're an artist and that you're capable of saying something, if you want to convey the idea of the need to discover others in order to discover yourself, and to open up yourself to open others up. And our Andalus Theater will show something new next year. We have performers from different generations, countries, and regions. My colleague Veronika Kozenkova has worked on that project as well, because Russian actors and directors took part there too. And at one of the world's largest theater festivals at Avignon, the Andalus Theater will be well represented next year. It will show a performance based on one of Chekhov's plays. Chekhov is a great humanist. There will be amazing sets, and Chekhov's aesthetics will come to Avignon. And Chekhov's plays and plays inspired by Chekhov will keep showing at one of the stages. Colleagues from Santiago de Chile will also come and will take part in a video program based on Chekhov. It will all be part of Avignon's official program, and that will be an amazing evidence of our multicultural approach. As part of that project, for students of Avignon University's theater department, together with Veronika Kozenkova, will participate in a theatrical seminar in Moscow, and then from Moscow they will go to Avignon and will give a talk about their work at the seminar. It will be an intercultural project, and there will be also performers who had worked with the great Ariane Mnouchkine. It will be Le Théâtre du Soleil. There will be performers from Russia, India, France, China, and other countries. And I would like to emphasize that every day an actor should work on him or herself should open up to others, should listen to others, and that will help us professionally, and hopefully it will help us build a world in which peace will win over war. I am working with humanity in peace, and together with them, I am involved in a project to plant trees of peace, and I will be happy to take your questions now. Questions, please, but be brief. I have a small question. What will the theater of the future be like, as you see it? The theater of the future. Well, what can I say? I believe the theater of the future must be intercultural. In other words, the aesthetics that penetrates our souls. I have worked with many mask performance traditions in many places, also in Seoul, Korea, and Narayan Mushkin has worked on that. So I believe that by discovering other cultures, we'll learn more about ourselves. So the theater of the future should enable this dialogue among cultures and generations. It should all come together. I am now working on Chekhov's plays. Maybe tomorrow it will be Shakespeare, Molière, my own plays. No matter what text they are saying. Mnuchin used to say, well, your spectator is 3 years old, not older. That means your speech must be understood by whoever is watching the performance. It should be powerful and simple, and that includes body language. Now I invite Veronika Kosenkova, director of Nikidom Theater, merited artist of the Russian Federation and creator of a unique method to liberate the voice entitled Metonics. Veronika, could you first tell us how theatrical art can unite young people of the world? Let me begin by saying let me begin from what unites me with Yelena Hanga, our childhood and young years. I spent my childhood in Tashkent, where there were exiles and emigres from France and refugees from Greece, and my Institute of Culture combined the cultures of Uzbek, Korean, and Greek people. So multiculturalism is in my blood, because my blood is a mixture of many identities, ethnicities. Now they talk a lot about tolerance. As a child, I realized that tolerance as a word should be treated with caution. For myself, I use a different word. It's understanding, mutual understanding. You need to feel this multiculturalism inside yourself. If you look down your family tree, you are sure to find this multiculturalism in your origins. Also, the question was, how does the theater unite people? Well, that's pantomime, ballet, music, and word. The theater shows a person's internal culture, and the spectator feels a lot broader and deeper when they watch Chekhov or Shakespeare. I've traveled from Brazil to the Bermudas teaching speech and sound. Everybody talks about Chekhov and Shakespeare. So if Chekhov, a man from Russia, is spoken about all over, that means that he has become universal through theater. And owing to this inborn feeling of multiculturalism, I have all my life staged international performances. For example, in Morocco, I staged a play based on Pushkin's Oriental works, and I weep when I hear Pushkin's verse read in Arabic by Moroccan reciters. It was a discovery for me how they all understand it. It was in French, Arabic, Flemish, and Russian in the city of Rabat. Also, I taught classes in the Bermudas on the subject of Chekhov and the voice in Chekhov's plays. The word is what the world is based on, and the sound is how people communicate along with animals. We communicate through sounds and gestures. That means understanding and attention to another person. This is the theme of my life, and now I am involved with Chekhov. I've told you why. This project will be in Avignon. There will be a lot of young people, and we are 4 of us teaching here various ways of disclosing the personality, because it opens up through theater, including the world inside and outside a human being. So it all depends on how the future is understood internally and externally. None of us has missed a time when you recited poems to your parents as a child. So this is something that will enable you to understand others. Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to Rushan Abiasov, first Vice Chairman of the Council of Muftis of Russia and Chairman of the Spiritual Department of Muslims for Moscow Oblast. He has higher religious and secular education and is preparing his doctoral thesis. Thank you. I'm happy to welcome you all here with the traditional Islamic greeting, Salam Alaikum. I thank you for inviting me to a discussion of this very important and interesting subject. But before I give you some of my ideas and proposals, can I ask a question to the audience? Yes, you can, but I am really limited in time. Okay, I will not be waiting for an answer. I just want our guests and friends at the festival to raise their hands. Has any one of you read the Bible? Who has read the Torah? Who has read the Quran? Excellent. Why I ask this is because as a religious personality, it's of great interest to me.
Well, intercultural dialogue and we're intercultural neighbors, and it's all in the scriptures. And the Almighty created everything, and He created us different from men, women, and we are different peoples. And I believe that the answer is evident here for those who read the book, so that we could just know each other, study each other. There is no urge in the holy books to be enemies, to be conflicting. From the point of view of religion, from the point of view of Islam, it's a real mortal sin. And the Almighty created this planet so that we could learn about everybody's traditions, customs. That's some kind of a test in life that we must pass with dignity. And when we undergo this short period of time, we could actually, on Judgment Day, just be responsible for everything that we did, everything that we said, everything that we thought. And it's highly important. It's highly important for us to know, to learn, to read holy text, to communicate with the representatives of different religions, different traditions. And there was a question here, how not to overstep, how not to just violate this fragile boundary. Every ethnic group must respect its own identity, but it's also respect of those who are next to you. And there are different programs, and of course religious leaders are met all the time. They meet at different interreligious forums, and we can see that because people don't know many things, lots of conflicts emerge, a lot of rebellions are started. When you read with great attention the texts of other religions, why are we going to do it? Because when you learn the culture and the traditions of your neighbor, a representative of another religion, of course, you are going to strengthen your self-identity. It's highly important from this point of view, especially when we look at Judaism, Christianity, Islam. There is one root here, and we are talking about Abrahamic religions, and all the prophets said the same thing, that people must believe in the Creator and do as much good as possible. We must actually create something. We should not destroy. We should do something good. And even one kind word, one smile, when another person feels better, of course, that's we get praise of the Almighty, and you create your relations. I would suggest another term: good neighboring. Being a good neighbor. When you are a good neighbor, well, this is a very good tradition here in Russia. There are lots of representatives of different religions in Russia, 4 traditional religions, Judaism, Christianity, Russian Orthodox, Buddhism, and Islam. And I would like to note one highly important matter. More than 1,000 years of neighboring relations, but no religious wars, because through learning about your own culture, also through learning the cultures and traditions of our neighbors, we created much more peaceful world. And now when we got religious freedom since 1991, although we have a long history, Islam and Christianity, they have more than 1,000 years of history in our country. And today we have Interreligious Council of Russia. We meet all the time. We discuss the challenges that the society is facing, and we try to maintain this dialogue. And it's not just a verbal dialogue at the conferences, but we conduct different events. A week ago in Moscow, we had a major event and Moscow International Competition of Quran readers. And because of you, because of the volunteers, we organize such events. And I have to tell you that when the volunteers work, and we don't just invite Muslims, we invite representatives of other religions, and any event that we conduct, when we learn about each other, when we cooperate, when we create something good, we strengthen our world, and we strengthen the accord in our society. What's highly important, we bring up our children, and in schools we have this unique opportunity when our children can also study history and the religious traditions, and this subject, history of world religions, this subject gives the opportunity to children to understand all the special features of their classmates, for example. And of course, first of all, it's highly important for us to study all the time, learn something new. We should be searching for knowledge, and we should create something new. Thank you so much. And now I give the floor to our guest from Catalonia, Rafael Salinas, a pianist and professor of the Highest School of Music of Catalonia. Unfortunately, distinguished speaker, we don't have that much time. Hello, thank you for inviting me, thank you for your attention. That was a joke. Well, it's as time's up, so I decided to be really brief. And if I may, my friend who sits here, I would like to ask the same question. Please raise your hand. Have you ever sung a song? So anybody who was singing a song ever, raise your hands. Music is inside us. When you breathe, when you look at this world, you give the beauty to this world. Because you already govern the world, you already manage the world. Beauty is in the hands of young people, and all the peoples include music in their culture. Doesn't matter what is the time, what is the geography. Music helps people to think, to speak, to remember, and it also helps people to understand each other. We work with people from different countries, refugees, local people in Barcelona, and music was the best way to create this joint, peaceful work. So we have these programs, conservatories programs, and jazz, rock, pop music, musicians from different countries. Nobody cares about religion, orientation, nationality, sex, and was it enough? Okay, my speech, was it long enough? Sufficient? I can speak for a very long time because this is my favorite topic. I love it. But I would like to ask, don't forget about music. The role of music in education, in also spiritual instruction of children. And I'd like to say that in our world, we shouldn't speak that much. We should sing together more. Great words. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you, all the guests. And after we leave, you'll be able to just torture our guests with your questions outside this room. We have to clean this room because other speakers are eager to come in.